Hi, this is Thomas Armstrong, and I'm making a series of short videos to introduce my new book, The Power of Neurodiversity, Unleashing the Advantages of Your Neurodivergent Brain. This is a completely revised and updated second edition of a book that I originally wrote in 2010. The topic of today's video is 25 positive role models with Down syndrome. In my book, I talk about the importance of positive niche construction. In other words, building an optimal environment for neurodivergent individuals. And I've conceived of 8 components of positive niche construction. One of those components is positive role models. I think it's really important for neurodivergent people to see that there are people out there who've achieved great things with the same kind of neurodivergency as one has, and that if they can do it, so can I. And this is particularly important for intellectual disabilities, or in this case, with Down syndrome. We have, unfortunately, because of a long history of IQ testing and of the use of unfortunate language, words like moron, imbecile, feeble-minded, were a big part of this country's history in the early part of the 20th century. Psychologists who were eugenicists and racists basically created a very disparaging idea of people with intellectual disabilities and Down syndrome. And so we really need to focus a lot on the positive, on the strengths, and on the possibilities for achievement that people with Down syndrome are able to do. If any one word seems to haunt the stereotypes that people have of Down syndrome, it's limitation. It's like, well, they look different from us, and well, they can't do a lot of the things, maybe most of the things that we neurotypicals can do. So the image of a potential, the image of the human potential of someone with Down syndrome is, well, someone's going to work in a sheltered workshop, as pictured here, where people do menial tasks like assemble cardboard boxes and put on stamps for postage. Or maybe they're working in a fast food restaurant, and this is seen as the apex of a person with Down syndrome career. And I want to destroy that stereotype. And I think we need to do that because things have changed a great deal in the last 100 years. And we're now seeing an incredible opening up of possibilities for people with intellectual disabilities. In this presentation, I want to focus on 25 individuals who've succeeded beyond people's expectations for who have Down syndrome. And I'm going to look at different roles that they've had. And I want to point out that even though I'm pigeonholing, in a sense, many of these individuals into specific roles, many of these individuals hold multiple roles. So that while I talk about actors, many of the actors have been advocates or have written books and so forth and so on. So let me begin by introducing you to some of these extraordinary people. Daniel Laurie is an actor who's played Reggie Jackson in the hit BBC period drama Call the Midwife, a role he's held since 2017, and he's won many acting awards. Paula Sage is the first person with Down syndrome to win a BAFTA award. That's the UK's version of the Academy Awards. It stands for the British Academy of Film and Television Arts. Zach Gottsagen was the star of a film called The Peanut Butter Falcon. It's a story about a boy with Down syndrome who escapes from an assisted living facility to train as a wrestler. Here he's shown with his co-star Shia LaBeouf. Zach was the first person with Down syndrome to present an Oscar, which he's doing here with Shia. Chris Burke was the first person with Down syndrome to star in a primetime television series, Life Goes On, in the 1980s. He acted in all several couple hundred episodes. He's acted in many other roles as well, is a musician, has written a book, and acted as an advocate for the National Down Syndrome Society. So you see, he wears many hats, as many of these individuals do. Lily D. Moore is a professional actress and model who has starred in films and television episodes, as well as national commercials. She gained national attention for her role of Rebecca, the outspoken tell-it-like-it-is sister of Paxton, on Netflix comedy drama Never Have I Ever. She has a fierce dream of winning an Oscar someday. Now let's look at some authors. Jason, this is a book called Count Us In, Growing Up with Down Syndrome, and this had two authors. The first one, Jason Kingsley, made his television debut on Sesame Street at 15 months old and appeared in 55 episodes. Later on, he guest starred in a 1984 episode of The Fall Guy and in episodes of All My Children and Touched by an Angel. Mitchell Levitz is a strong advocate of Down syndrome and holds a position as a consumer issues specialist at the Westchester Institute for Human Development. Chris Dinkick had an open heart surgery at 5 months old, was not able to walk well until 4 years old, or eat solid food until the age of 5. Yet he became the first person with Down syndrome to finish an Ironman triathlon. And he co-authored this book, 1% Better, with journalist and best-selling author and speaker Don Yeager. David Egan is a disability advocate who was awarded the 2022 Quincy Jones Exceptional Advocacy Award. He is the author of this book, More Alike Than Different, My Life with Down Syndrome. There are models who have Down syndrome. Madeline Stewart is widely regarded as the first professional model with Down syndrome. She has appeared on the New York Fashion Week catwalk and has also walked Paris Fashion Week, London Fashion Week, Runway Dubai, Russian Fashion Week, Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week, and many, many more. Sofia Girao is a Puerto Rican model who was the first person with Down syndrome to model for Victoria's Secret. She also runs an online fashion store called Alivet, which sells hats, phone cases, and other items. Now there are even not just models, but also fashion designers who have Down syndrome. One, in fact, Isabella Spring Mule Tejada, is a Guatemalan fashion designer and is the first fashion designer with Down syndrome, to have her work showcased at London Fashion Week. Under her brand, Down to Jabel, she creates sustainable designs using colorful Guatemalan fabrics. Because largely as a result of Special Olympics, we see many examples of athletes with Down syndrome, but there have been athletes who have succeeded even beyond the Special Olympics, as we will see. Karen Gaffney is the president of the Karen Gaffney Foundation, a nonprofit organization headquartered in Portland, Oregon, dedicated to championing the journey to full inclusion for people with Down syndrome and other disabilities. She became the first person with Down syndrome to complete a relay swim of the English Channel in 2001. Now for musicians, and I should point out with the athletes, I also talked about Chris Kissick, who was a triathlon as well as a co-author. And there are many other athletes who were left out of this presentation because I wanted to keep it fairly short. Now for some musicians with Down syndrome. Sujit Desai is a musician who plays 7 instruments, the B-flat and bass clarinet, alto saxophone, violin, piano, trumpet, and drums. He was the first person with Down syndrome to play at Carnegie Hall, where he received a standing ovation. Sujit has performed in nearly every state and 13 countries. Hu Yizhao was a prominent conductor in China and has Down syndrome. He rocketed to stardom there after a documentary was made of his performance conducting Georges Bizet's opera Carmen. We've already looked at some advocates for Down syndrome. Some of these advocates have taken their case to Washington, D.C. in some cases. Frank Stevens is an ambassador for Global Down Syndrome Foundation and represented the foundation at the first U.S. congressional hearing for Down syndrome research. He has publicly confronted figures like conservative political commentator Ann Coulter and comedian Gary Owen about their use of words and behaviors that were seen to be offensive to people with Down syndrome and disabilities in general. Kayla McKeon is the first registered lobbyist with Down syndrome. She's the manager of grassroots advocacy with the National Down Syndrome Society. She has been instrumental in passing legislation to protect the rights and opportunities of individuals with disabilities. Now I'll look at some entrepreneurs, people who created their own businesses. Susie Sokolsky was a breakfast host at a Minnesota Hampton Inn when people started commenting on the corn nuts she offered to customers. She decided to go into business manufacturing kettle corn and selling it to companies like the North Dakota Corn Council and to individuals around the world through her website, which is sunshine-suzy.com, sunshine-suzy.com. She's also an in-demand motivational speaker. Colette DeVito developed a passion for baking after taking high school classes in home economics. After testing out different cookie recipes, she came up with an original cinnamon chocolate chip cookie that people raved over. After 3 years at Clemson University and some unsuccessful job interviews, she decided to turn her recipe into a business, Colette's Cookies. She's been featured on CNN, Good Morning America, MSNBC, and many other print and television media outlets around the world. She has sold nearly 500,000 cookies to date. Tim Harris, here pictured with President Barack Obama, is an athlete who's won gold at the Special Olympics and is the only person with Down syndrome in the U.S. to have owned his own restaurant. Ryan Kennedy is a Lincoln, Nebraska resident who has created a business called Ryan's Market, selling microgreen plants, worms, and other green products to gardeners, nurseries, and owners of pet rabbits and birds. We see some scholars with Down syndrome also, people who have gone beyond. I mean, another stereotype that people have with Down syndrome is that they pretty much can't make it beyond high school. And that's simply not true anymore, if it ever was. And so let's look at some of these scholars. In 2022, Charlotte Woodward and Madison Essig were only the 5th and 6th students with Down syndrome to graduate from a 4-year institution, George Mason University, with a bachelor's degree. Pablo Pineda is an award-winning Spanish actor, and he's the first person with Down syndrome to acquire a university degree in Europe. He holds a diploma in teaching and a Bachelor of Arts degree in educational psychology. And finally, let's take a look at some of the artists with Down syndrome. Before her death in 2005, Judith Scott was a world-acclaimed fiber artist working in mixed media. Scott's work was featured in a retrospective at the Brooklyn Museum in 2014, which received acclaim in New York. She has also been the subject of major shows in Switzerland and Japan. Alan Tellez is a Mexican artist who studied at the Municipal de Bellas Artes, Mexico's world-renowned art institute. His influences include Joan Miró and Pablo Picasso. He is focused on painting faces in particular to show how everyone is different and special in their own way. So that just gives you a beginning picture of the possibilities that are out there for people with Down syndrome. And I hope that this has been instructive to you, and that if you've been carrying around stereotypes of people with Down syndrome or other intellectual disabilities, that you begin to dismantle it and reevaluate your attitudes toward these individuals, these special and great people. So that's a picture of one chapter of my book, The Power of Neurodiversity. I hope you get the book. There's a lot of other material in there about dyslexia and ADHD and mood disorders and autism and so forth. And I hope you share it with your parents, your teachers, your co-workers, your therapists, and so forth. I've created a neurodiversity strengths checklist, which is 200 items, and it's a strength-based assessment. And it's because of this, these negative stereotypes that we carry around, that I thought somebody needed to give an assessment which only focused on strengths, because so many neurodivergent people have experiences of having failed at tests and having taken these diagnostic tests that tell them what they're not good at. And it's about time they had an assessment that told them what they were good at. If you want to receive a copy of this checklist, go to my website, which is institute4learning.com. That's institute, the number 4, learning.com. And put your email in my blog post sign up box, and you will receive automatically a neurodiversity strengths checklist. So thank you so much for listening, for watching, and I hope the information was useful to you, and that you will watch some of my other videos. If you want to watch, I've done about 32 videos so far, and they're on my Power of Neurodiversity playlist on YouTube. So anyway, thanks so much, and have, wherever you are, a good day, a morning or evening, and thank you for listening. Bye-bye.